so I'll just do our intro. I don't know why I'm cracking my knuckles. Jaru, you better do this right.
I will beat the shit out of Freddy Fazbear.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to... Wow, for a long time I still have not thought of a name for this. Bill and Jaru, we're talking about monsters again. You would think with the year that we've had, I would have thought of a name for this series. Introducing Jaru.
Hello.
I really thought you were going to do your I'm not dead.
I've been uploading more frequently than ever. I'm actually pretty alive for once.
Yay! Character development. The best anime arc since forever.
Yeah, who needs specific examples?
So, but for once, we're not talking about a Resident Evil game yet. No, there'll probably be another one in the future. But this has kind of been on my radar for a while, and it was on my radar last year for Billy Ween, but then my Elgato decided to give me the good old finger and say, no, I'm not recording 2 hours of footage of it. This is Five Nights at Freddy's, and does it still hold up, is the question. Because this game came out in, 2014?
Oh, dang, is it that old? Oh, I'm ancient. I'm an old man.
I mean, no offense, you do kind of sound it. But I could just
take it. What the fuck?
Oh, I'm sorry. that came out more. It sounded funnier in my
podcast. Remember that other podcast we did where one of the guests said, "You sound fat." It's like, what the fuck? I sound fat and old. What the hell?
So I feel bad now. I'm just one of those people where I think something sounds funny in my head, then when I say it, I'm just like, wow, I just sound like a dick.
Nah, that's fine.
Oh goodness, I forgot about that line.
Well, continue with the show, whippersnapper.
Yeah. It's okay, Grandpa. So, Five Nights at Freddy's is a game that you might have heard of. It's pretty under the radar most days. Said no one ever. I think even if you weren't on social media, you knew of this game.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a cultural icon at this point.
I think it was kind of 2014's version of Among Us and Fortnite. It was a game that existed, barely anyone knew about it, but then suddenly a YouTuber played it and it just blew up.
Yeah. Like, I think this game was originally uploaded on itch.io. Like, that's how, like, and for people who aren't, addicted to watching horror game Let's Plays, most horror games that you find on itch.io made by are just not good. They're just not very good. So The fact that a game that would define a generation of horror first showed up there is kind of hilarious.
Do you know what? The way you describe that as well is a good segue to the start of this first week, because when Five Nights at Freddy's, the first one, came out, I'm just going to say this, indie horror games were getting shit.
They were definitely kind of getting a bit stale.
Like, I didn't play Amnesia when it was popular. I only played it in 2019. I thought it was fantastic. The fact this was made by one guy was commendable. Well, one guy who made the maps and stuff like that and programmed it. He did have a few more people to help out with voice acting and designs. But then it seemed like after that, people just tried to copy Amnesia. Because I was noticing that when I played Amnesia, I started to realise, I am starting to see where this whole trend of waking up in the middle of nowhere, you're in a dark place, there's something trying to chase you, and, that sort of gimmick came from.
Yeah. Running, again, if you've been a part of the indie horror scene for any length of time, you'll know that it is 90% copying more popular franchises. And for the longest time, the name of the game was to copy Silent Hill. And they still do a fair amount of copying of Silent Hill. But Amnesia was the first big, horror game to really shake the scene. And so a lot of people started copying that for a while. And, it came out in 2010. So for the better part of 4 years, we were kind of devoid of any, particularly iconic or groundbreaking indie horror games. So FNAF showed up at perfect time to really shake things up.
Yeah, and funny enough, history repeated itself. People then tried to make their own Five Nights at Freddy's.
Oh yeah, lots of people, and with varying levels of success. Some of them were horrifically bad, but some of them were like worthwhile games, like independent of the FNAF franchise. Which is why I think it's so cool that Scott Cawthon recruited a lot of these fan developers to make games with the what's it called, the Fazbear Initiative, which was responsible for getting extra funding and support to help make a bunch of cool fan FNAF stuff, and I think that's really awesome.
It is crazy how over the years, companies like Xbox and many other developers sort of done what Scott Cawthon does now, like tries to help small devs become big devs.
And that's awesome. I think that's really healthy for the game industry. When there's not competition, franchises can stagnate and get boring. But when there's competition, games have to keep innovating in interesting and entertaining ways in order to keep people's attention. So I'm a big fan of that, and I'm very pleased with the games we've seen from the Fazbear Initiative thus far. One of the games they're working on, in fact, is a reimagining / remake of Five Nights at Freddy's 1. So that's very interesting.
But now, this raises the question, is this game worth remaking, and is it worth back looking on and thinking, this was definitely peak horror games? I think yes and no. I don't think this is a bad game, but I don't think it's an amazing game, like maybe what I thought about when I was a kid. I think the problem is, this game was both trying to target towards older / younger audiences, and I think some games can work like that, like Mario, Sonic. Sometimes, though, I feel like that can, depend on the type of game you're trying to create, that could also just be a kerfuffle. The best way I could describe it.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting.
Oh, sorry.
No, you make a good point, is that some people have been very critical of this kind of subgenre of horror directed at younger audiences, like Five Nights at Freddy's, Bendy and the Ink Machine, Poppy's Playtime, things like that.
I've not yet played Poppy's Playtime, but I have played Bendy and the Ink Machine, a pretty good game.
Yeah, but some people feel like it might be not a good thing to target horror games that are focused on such horrific content like murder and death and serial killers, and direct that at children. And so there is some drama online of people having that discussion. Personally, I think it's on the parent more than the game dev to keep bad games out of kids' hands. But I can understand why there might be a little, when you see like kids walking around with Freddy Fazbear plushies and backpacks and merchandise, it can feel a little, is this ethical? Like, there's definitely a question to be had there.
Yeah. So I guess we should actually kind of just dive into what we first see when you boot up the game, which I've always kind of said this. When you're establishing any game, horror, adventure, an RPG, the opening is what's going to set the scene for you. And I have to say, this might be an unpopular opinion, I think the opening to Five Nights at Freddy's is probably one of the most brilliant ways I've seen a horror game open.
Go on.
So, okay, let's look at something like Resident Evil 1. The moment you start the game, it's literally telling you there's been murders in the mountains, there's this eerie music, and there's these unsettling images of monsters. It's pretty much saying, oh yeah, you're in for like a zombie or monster house type of adventure. The same with House of the Dead. The moment you start the game, all you're seeing is an entire city of people being massacred by monsters and stuff. Again, a perfect setup for what you're going to be installed for. You're going to be in for a ludicrous adventure. And every sort of horror game I've seen do these like dramatic openings. But what does Five Nights at Freddy's do? It literally just opens up like you've just sat down. Like you've just started your shift, and I think that pretty much explains what this kind of game is going to be. You are literally just sat in a room and your character's just treating it as just a job. And yet you don't know what the monster is. You don't really know who you're working for. It's just, you open up and all you see is your desk. And you're just wondering, okay, what do I do?
Yeah, you make a very good point. I never really thought about that before, but part of what makes, at least the first couple Five Nights at Freddy's games unique is the mundanity of it all. You are just doing your, well, not your day job, but your job. It's very much like you're punching in, and like the night isn't over because you defeat the monster. The night's over because your shift ends, and like that's a very unique approach to have this sort of mundane meets horror vibe, where it's like there's just a nightmare and it's something you come back to every night. And you know, I don't know what to make of that precisely, but it is unique, so I'll give it that.
Not just that, it's the fact that you kind of get an idea for the setting you're in. Like, for instance, when you look at your desk, I even have the image on right now, I'll put it on screen. You see your desk, you see a fan blowing, you see that you have an old computer, an old monitor, there's cobwebs everywhere, children's paintings, and the place you're working in just looks run down. But, and that's both eerie, but also kind of comical in a way, because it's like, there's no dramatic opening, there's no eerie music to be like, ooh, we are scary. It's just silence. All you hear is like the wind, and you're just sat there waiting for the phone to ring. Like, because I don't know why. Because when you look at future Five Nights at Freddy's games, they do start leaning towards a more dramatic openings, really, like eerie music and stuff like that. But the first game was just, here you are, and you're just there wondering, what is going on? Like, your character doesn't speak either, so it's almost like you're playing as you that's just been plopped into this random room. Like, I think that's a brilliant. It'd be like, imagine how scary it would be playing Resident Evil 1 from a first-person perspective, and all you know is that you're just in this mansion. You're just in the middle of the mansion. You don't know where you are. It's both uncomfortable and unnerving, and you just want to explore and find out what's going on.
That's a very good point. Hilariously, that's part of what made the original Amnesia: The Dark Descent work as a cold open, is because your character literally has amnesia. So they're as in the dark about what's going on as you are. And aside from a few brief bits of foreshadowing dialogue, it's very much you're in a castle, go figure it out. And I think that's really smart game design for a horror game, because a huge portion of horror is the mystery. That's why horror movies that keep the monster hidden for the majority of the runtime are so much scarier. Is because your imagination will fill in the gaps of the mystery and with more horrifying thoughts than any real monster could. And so, yeah, I think you're right. That's another part of what makes the original FNAF opening so effective. Is like, you have no idea what the hell's going on.
Because that's why I always thought it was kind of interesting, because I played this game when I was a kid. Me and my sister played it on the phone. Yet, when I played it last year, sadly, you guys won't be able to see it because my Elgato's a dick. I was just really unnerved, and I was just looking around like, okay. I thought that I could have sworn there was like a cutscene. Maybe I was remembering like the second game.
The second game doesn't have a cutscene either.
No, I think it does actually. It opens up with Freddy next to his friends or something. Or maybe that was the third game. You could be right.
Oh, does it start with that? I thought that was in between. You might be right. I take it back. Although, to be fair, that intro cutscene doesn't reveal anything either.
No. But then, suddenly, without a warning, your phone starts ringing, and at first, I remember, I was thinking, like, it's like some Jigsaw character going to be on the other side. But no, it's the man himself, Scott Coffin. I know he's called the phone guy, but I just like to refer to him as Scott. And he's just all cheery, like, okay then, welcome to your first day of the job. And he's giving you the rundown, so you're kind of getting this impression that they don't know what's going on in this place, sort of like a haunted sort of house thing, you know. Caretakers say some things are a bit odd. But no, they straight out say, oh, sometimes the animatronics might kill you. Like, okay. Like, yeah, they might kill you, stuff you into a machine, your eyes will burst out and your skull gets crushed, but just follow these rules and you'll be fine. Just that's both comical but also fucked up, and I love it.
That's another big element that's a recurring thing in these games. It's just the dark humor. Like the phone guy, he's very much like jokey and like we're not like actively making jokes, but he's very like dark comedy about his like casual discussion of they might stuff you into a Freddy Fazbear suit and you'd never see the light of day again. But that never happened. It's like there's a degree of humor to of this franchise that is also part of what makes it fun. It doesn't take itself super seriously.
Yeah, which I really like, because I know humor's subjective, but I feel like dark humor. I might be an unpopular opinion. Dark humor is not. If you're gonna say something dark, make it humorous. Like if I just went up to you, Jaru, like knock knock, who's there? You're a fucking idiot. Go kill yourself. Where's the punchline?
I mean, it was kind of funny.
I guess in this context, because it's an exaggerated one, so I guess I kind of ruined the point I was going to make.
Sorry.
Okay, well let me put it in a context. Like someone makes a joke about your dead relative, no context whatsoever. Just hey, do you know your dad's dead? There's nothing really humorous about it. It's just it's just meant to be dark. It's like that's not a joke. Dark humor is something like, I remember on my first holiday, my uncle took me to his basement and did funny things. It's dark, but you can kind of put in the imagination of what happened.
There's and like the comedy and that terrible example was that you expect them to be reminiscing about something positive, not negative, and so that contrast of expectations with the actual punchline is where the humor arises.
Which I think the game did splendidly well, and each phone call kind of got funnier and funnier until the 4th and 5th night, which we will get to.
Indeed. So, should we talk about the characters?
Yes, so pretty much you got your phone call, and the moment you turn up your image, and I'm really disappointed this never appeared in my first playthrough. So if you're looking up during your phone call, you see the main characters of the first night. Freddy, Chica, was that her name?
Yep.
Annie and Bonnie, the rabbit with the guitar. And straight out of the gate, I'm really disappointed this image never appeared where the animatronics stare at you after your second viewing of seeing them.
Yep, it's very spooky.
That is uncomfortable, because on my first playthrough, now I will say though, this was pretty good as well. I'm looking around the place, and I will admit as well, again going into the setting, it's both somehow unsettling yet not too unsettling at the same time. Like, because you're just looking at what would be a McDonald's, a Chuck E. Cheese, a KFC. It's like, okay, it's just a little kid area. But then you look at the animatronics, and you're just there like, those are unnerving to look at, especially because here's the thing: when animatronics are moving, they're not unnerving to me. But when they stop moving, that's when it's uncomfortable.
You're right. That's another big part of what made the original so scary, is that you never see them moving. You only see them staring, usually at you. And that's horrifying. They reserve the moments of actual movement for surprise moments, either when you're being jump scared and killed or when Foxy's running down the hall. And in both cases, because those moments are so like panic inducing and scary, because there's so little movement otherwise. So that's again another like shockingly clever attribute to the experience.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say this: mannequins do make me uncomfortable when you're alone in a dark room. If I'm walking around a mall and I see an animatronic or a mannequin still, I'm just like, whatever. But there is something unnerving. Imagine walking through a mall and there's just mannequins around. They're not moving, they're just looking at you. Or looking in your direction. There is something unnerving about it, yet you know you're okay in that scenario. Yet somehow these things that have no life, no soul, just piercing at you just make you shiver. It makes you unnerved.
Yeah. It's that uncanny valley. It's the sense that there's something there that's more human than it should be, but less human than you're comfortable with.
And this is actually another thing that makes these animatronics more scarier. There is music, but it's not like dragged on music. Like, take for instance when Nemesis is chasing you throughout Resident Evil 3's remake, or even in the original. There's that drumming music, that action-packed music, or that violin score when he smashes through a wall. But when these animatronics move, there's no like violin that goes dun-dun-dun, to like, oh, there's nothing there. Like the moment you look at your camera and Bonnie's gone on the first night, you're just there like, oh shit! And the first thing you do is you're panicking. You're like, where is he? Where is he? I'm looking on all the cameras. So obviously you wouldn't feel this on your like second playthrough, but your first night, your first time playing the game, that moment where the animatronics both look at you in the camera, but then the camera goes off quickly, and one of the animatronics is gone, and you start panicking, looking around. You're looking around your office like, where is he? Where is he?
Yep.
That.
Oh man.
Yeah, these guys look so adorable looking. Occasionally, you know, these are meant to look like cute characters, like Teletubbies. Yet, that when they start disappearing and moving around, you're worried, like, oh goodness.
Yeah, when they're just sort of acting robotic and doing their thing, it's like, oh, okay, just this, janky animatronic thing. But when they're very subtly looking at you when they shouldn't be, it suddenly gives them this subtle life that feels so unnerving, because it's like, you shouldn't be alive, yet there's something alive about you, and I don't like it.
This is... I'm not going to talk about much of this game, we might talk about it in the future. This is where I kind of feel like Security Breach failed with its animatronics. Oh, did I lose contact with you? Hello?
Testing 1 2 3.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Now I can. I think you cut out for a second.
Oh no, I was worried I went into my squirrel voice again. Remember that?
Not off the top of my head.
Alright, but yeah, this is where I kind of felt like, I'm not going to dwell on this a bit more, we had to go through this quick. This is where I feel like Security Breach failed with its animatronics, because this is going to be weird to say from a gameplay standpoint, they were too animated. So like when they're running about and stuff like that, they didn't really make me uncomfortable. Sure, sneaking around them can be, tense, but I felt like there was something more tense when the animatronics were just staring at the camera. That's what the thing that also made it scary. They know you're watching them. Like, that's what made it even more creepy. They're not like looking around like, where am I? Where's that person? They're just staring at the cameras in every angle. So they know where you are, and it's almost like they're taunting you.
Yeah, and I can see where you're coming from, and not to dive too much into Security Breach. I think that's what it's called, right?
Yeah, Security Breach.
But like the concept of the uncanny valley is very relevant here, because with the animatronics in Security Breach, they're not really animatronics anymore. They're more like super advanced robots with personalities and identities and things they like, things they dislike. They're more like actual fleshed out characters, not things that are alive that shouldn't be. And because they're so well fleshed out as people, that makes it to where they're not as scary, because they're people. They're not unnatural. Whereas in the original Five Nights at Freddy's, part of what makes it so uncomfortable is that there's this thing that shouldn't in any way be human. It shouldn't in any way have a personality or an identity. It should be just a bag of nuts and bolts, and that's it. But instead, there's just that glimmer of something more there, something that shouldn't be there. And that shifts it from a weird robot into abomination. There's something unnatural going on, and that's what makes it scary. And I can't agree. Like, I have my own opinions on Security Breach, but I would definitely say that it's not as scary. I don't even know if it really even qualifies as a horror game at that point, as the original games, to be certain.
It has its moments, but like I said, we'll probably discuss that in like the near future, because at some point we plan to go through all the games, the ones that more interest me and you.
Certainly.
I don't think FNAF World is a topic for discussion.
I think it's a quaint game, but no, it's like if Security Breach might not qualify as a horror game, FNAF World definitely does not qualify as a horror game.
Yeah, it's a fun satire game, I'll give it that.
Yeah, it's quaint.
So
But back to the characters.
yeah, so Bonnie's the first monster you pretty much encounter. I guess Chica as well. It rarely ever happens from what I see, but it's mostly Bonnie that is active at night. Sometimes even Foxy as well. It's rare, but it
Yeah.
happens.
I think hilariously, Foxy is technically like can technically activate on night 1 or 2. He's not supposed to, but it can happen, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah, I never got that luxury of being jump scared by him. I didn't even get jump scared by Bonnie. He never actually made it to my door. That's why I felt like, because I feel like you are meant to die on every single night. It's just that the animatronics get harder and harder, and you have to kind of learn their patterns.
The tricky thing is that their AI is very random. It's very RNG, and so you can, like, people have done this. You can start up Five Nights at Freddy on night 1, do nothing the entire night for all 5 nights, and get to the end and win without dying, because if you just get lucky enough, that's how random they are. There's no guarantee that they'll show up, but on the flip side, they could also show up back to back to back to back to back and drain all your power. So that helps the horror, although it does it does make the completionists pull their hair out.
I'm sure.
But yeah, Bonnie is on the topic of Bonnie. He's different from the other animatronics because the others follow routines where Chica will go from the stage to the dining area to the kitchen to your hall to your door, and then we'll go back to the dining area, and she'll loop like that. But Bonnie just fucking teleports. Flat out, he'll just be, I'm on stage, I'm in your throat, and like instantly, like he cheats.
Because this is what was actually going to be interesting about Bonnie, because I looked up some behind the scenes about him. One thing I felt was kind of interesting, the actual creator Scott had nightmares about Bonnie. I think there's like an image that he did, or not even he did, I think this is a glitch, where Bonnie's eyes go completely black and he stares at a camera. Apparently that was a glitch at first, and when Scott went to bed that night, he had a nightmare of Bonnie, which... Imagine a game developer being scared by their own game.
I mean, it's kind of awesome, to be honest. It's like, it scared me so bad, and I'm the one who made them. It's like that's some great PR, like, if nothing else. And I can definitely see why he feels that. I mean, I think in many ways, Bonnie is kind of the mascot of Five Nights at Freddy's 2. He's kind of like the big, like, he's focused on heavily in the trailer. So I can definitely see that Scott immediately had a personal connection with Bonnie above the others.
Yeah, and another thing that was kind of interesting about Bonnie, he was kind of shafted by Foxy.
In the hearts of the fans, or...
Well, in the way that how he was meant to play, because you mentioned he teleported. Originally, Bonnie was meant to be the one that moved around the most. In fact, in some camera shots, he was meant to be the one running across the cameras sometimes. In toilets, he would sometimes run past it. You just see a shadow of him. In the bit where Foxy runs down, that was originally meant to be Bonnie. And I can kind of actually believe that, because the way Foxy runs feels a bit too ginormous. Like, his arms are like stretched out, almost like T-posing. When you look at Bonnie, it feels like his shape was actually meant to be more in that spot, but I guess maybe he wanted to add a fourth animatronic.
I mean, that's an interesting concept. It would be cool to see if someone wanted to make like a mod to replace like Bonnie and Foxy with each other. That'd be kind of cool to see like what it would have felt like if Bonnie was... Actually, that's a good question. If any other character was put in the role of Foxy, would any of the others have been scarier than Foxy?
Yeah, because that's the question, because briefly mentioned Foxy, I feel like he's the least scariest out of all of them.
I'd say that's partially because he doesn't have a proper jump scare for when he kills you.
It is kind of derpy looking.
he just sort of like does like a comedic like it's like Kramer breaking into Jerry Seinfeld's apartment in Seinfeld. It's like hello, like you expect a laugh track to start playing. It's like, oh, that wacky Foxy, like
Yeah, because when you look at Bonnie's one, it's almost like he's lunging at you, like "I've got you" sort of thing. But then,
yeah.
but then Foxy's just like, "Sup, I'm ordering a pizza. You want some?"
Yeah, in fact, there was a popular fan theory in the community for a while that in Five Nights at Freddy's 1, that Foxy might be a good guy, that he was coming to warn you, but you get a game over anyway because you have a heart attack from being so spooked. I'm pretty sure that's not canon,
No.
but it just goes to show that he was so unscary that people actually started to question if he was even an enemy. So yeah, you make a good point. I think the consensus would be that Foxy's probably the least scary overall. But what's interesting is like something that makes the original so compelling to me is the lighting and the way they frame the animatronics when they're in each room. Like when Bonnie goes to the supply closet or the back room with the other animatronic parts, there's a chance that normally he's just sort of standing there, menacingly, but there's a chance that when you go to that camera, instead of just standing there, he'll be right up in the camera's grill, just staring at you with black eyes, and that's those kinds of images are what makes of just the animatronics looking creepy in really creepy lighting that is so unique, I think, to Five Nights at Freddy's 1. Like, all the games play with this trope, at least a little bit, but I think Five Nights at Freddy's 1 had its own unique aesthetic that the others don't quite capture. And when it comes to Bonnie, he has some of the spookier moments. Like he'll stare at the camera when he's standing in the dining area. He'll look up at the camera. Sometimes he looks kind of silly, like when he's standing right outside your door, or whenever he's in that like one camera that's like right outside your door, that where he like looks sidelong up at the camera. He looks a little like mischievous rather than spooky. I think
that
those
scared me the first time because when Bonnie disappeared on my playthrough, that was the first spot he went to. Which
it is like that's a good point. It is kind of terrifying to realize, oh, that's literally right next to me. Like,
but I get what you mean. He does kind of look. I don't know why. I'm just expecting the Pink Panther music to play when he's just standing there.
That's hilarious.
The camera just shrinks further into.
But personally, while I do think Bonnie can be pretty creepy in FNAF 1, I would not say I personally consider him to be the scariest. I think he kind of peaked in his horror in FNAF 2. But Bonnie is definitely pretty creepy at times in FNAF 1, to be sure.
And I guess that could be a segue into the next character who has a questionable fan base. That would be Chica. And every game that's come out about this bloody chicken, who I didn't even know was a chick. Okay, the way I just said that sounds dumb. I didn't know it was a lady. I just assumed they were a boys group, and I don't know what. I'm not sure if this is the intention of Scott. And I don't personally find her sexy, but why would they aim to make her? Why did they give her Mrs. Incredible hips in every incarnation of her?
Including FNAF 1?
No, I mean like from onwards, like from there. Like she looks really unnerving, but then
I don't think she looked into. Well, I mean,
like the first game, she is quite unnerving to look at. I think like compared to Bonnie, while he has some good moments, like you mentioned, the camera looking. I feel like in every camera shot, Chica is the most unnerving to look at.
I kind of agree, actually. There's something about her eyes Like with Bonnie, he can sometimes look kind of like emotive, like sly or mischievous, or like he has his scary shots, but he also has his kind of more personal, like his more kind of silly looking shots. But with Chica, her dead eyes are so consistently just unnerving. And the way that her jaw will just hang open in most shots just further adds to this like there's something inhuman about her, and it's combined with the fact that she said her shirt, her bib literally says "Let's eat." It gives this impression like a zombie staring at you, carving or craving for your flesh. It's like there's this element of, oh God. And like even when she shows up at the door, it's like I think she looks a little spookier standing in the doorway than Bonnie.
Yeah, Bonnie kind of looks like, oh, I found you.
He does have that goofy kind of vibe, doesn't he?
Yeah, but then Chica's just like, oh, you comfortable in there? Like, even her hands on the window, like, she's eagerly waiting for you to fuck up and open the door by accident.
Yeah, right. It's so easy for me to kind of retroactively dismiss Chica, considering how like minor she becomes in later games. But in the original game, in terms of her like horror vibe and relevance, she kind of vanishes as the games progress. But I mean, in terms of,
you could give her credit though. Unlike Bonnie, who is referenced in Security Breach, she does become one of the first threats you have to deal with.
Certainly.
So she's definitely made her spot.
But as far as like, to be sure, but I feel like she's never the scariest animatronic in any of the games. But I think like she comes closest to being the scariest in FNAF 1. So she's kind of the point is it's easy for me to accidentally dismiss her, but I do actually think she's like the second scariest animatronic in the original. She's creepy. I don't like the big chicken lady.
I think when we were bringing up Bonnie looking a bit too goofy with when he's right by the door and he's giving you the eye, yeah, it does look goofy, but then when Chica does it, she actually looks menacing.
Yeah,
like she shows her
Agreed.
teeth, like, and sometimes her head will twitch, which is even more unnerving when they start moving in the camera. It's which I didn't really mention it. I love the fact it's rare when you see them move, because I think that's what makes it when they do move. That's when it's the creepiest.
Agreed. Yeah, because like you get so used to the stillness that when there's movement, it feels like there's something horrible about to happen. It trains you to be afraid of movement, which is really clever. Again, like that's good game design.
Which I really hope the remake kind of just keeps to that, because one thing, as much as I only briefly played this, when I played Five Nights at Freddy's 1 in the virtual reality version, when you see the animatronics walking alongside the door, it kind of made them less scary.
Oh yes, agreed.
Like the whole idea was that it was rare seeing them move, and then suddenly they still did the thing sometimes where they would appear around the room, but then when they're near the offices, you just see them doing the doom, the doom, the doom, the doom. Oh hello! Oh, you shut the door on me. So it's like that's not scary. That's too goofy. And don't get me wrong, I get it. This game's trying to both be goofy as well as scary. But I feel when it'd be like, I don't know. Imagine Mr. X from Resident Evil 2's remake. He starts off intimidating, but as soon as he gets close to you, he just starts like tiptoeing up to you. It's like, the intimidation's kind of ruined then.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what you do after that. You just kind of ruin the scare.
Agreed. I definitely think a big important part is the lack of movement. Agreed. Like I think that's part of what makes I think that's an important part. Like probably the biggest part of what makes the original FNAF work so well. And I think it was wise to keep the movement to a minimum for a lot of these games. Like it really, with the exception of like the last like 2-ish games, they've stuck to that. Like FNAF 1, 2, 3, 4, Sister Location, like most of them either don't have the animatronics move or they barely have the move and they keep it off screen. And I think that's wise. Like to use an example from another piece of media as why that's important would be the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who.
Oh my god! I really thought I was such a brave boy seeing all of the scary monsters in that, but no, the Weeping Angels legit made me cry as a kid. To the point I asked my mum to turn off the TV because I was never allowed the remote. Too bad she was outside the house smoking, so I was just there crying in the living room.
Yeah, no, I think like for those who aren't aware of somehow of the Weeping Angels in Doctor Who, they're basically these angel statues that cannot move when you're looking at them. And in the original episode where they debut the angels, they stretch that fact to the camera as well. So even when the audience is looking at them, they don't move. So the only time they move is when neither the character nor the audience can see them. And this leads to some terrifying moments where a statue that was, far away a second ago, you look back and it's right next to you. And it's like, that's a big part of what makes them horrifying. And so in one of the much later episodes, when they actually show the angels moving, it's like, that ruins it. Like, that's not what makes...
Yeah.
A statue that looks like an angel is not inherently terrifying. It's the fact that they shouldn't. It's that uncanny valley where it's like a statue shouldn't be able to move. The fact that it does, but only kind of, means it's not like a golem that's moving around. It's not a statue either. It's in between. It's something that shouldn't be alive but is, and that uncanny valley is so important for both the Weeping Angels and for the animatronics. And I think that's a big part of it, and a big part of why Security Breach is not as scary, in my opinion.
And I think to wrap up Chica's thing, one thing I also kind of noticed when we were discussing both Bonnie and Chica, you also kind of get an idea of the animatronics' personalities. No, not the characters they're based on, the animatronics themselves, which I think is also another unique thing about this game. So how you described about the animatronics, and all the images you see, they're like, oh, fun party animals. But then when you see them at night, you're not looking at the character anymore, you're looking at the animatronic, and you get a different personality from each one of them. Like we mentioned with Bonnie, he's sporadic, he moves around, and almost tries to throw you off, like he's trying to cleverly catch you off guard. But Chica, on the other hand, have you ever noticed in every single image, she wants to be the biggest thing seen in that room? Even in, it's rare, but when you see both Chica and Bonnie in the same dining room area, Chica's looking at the camera and trying to almost like overtake Bonnie, as in to say like, yes, I'm coming for you. Like, you should be scared of me. And even when she's at the window, like Bonnie still tries to stay hidden. Like when he's at the door, he doesn't try and look by the window or anything like that. He wants to be behind the door, like he's ready to lunge. Chica, on the other hand, stands by the window, like eagerly awaiting you.
Yeah, and you make a good point, because like she's also the loudest of the animatronics because she bangs a bunch of pots and pans together when she's in the kitchen, and that's how you know she's in there, is because she's making all that noise. It's almost like, since there's no camera for you to look at her through, she has to make up for it by getting your attention with a bunch of noise. So you've got a good point. There's a degree of personality there where she has a very larger-than-life persona because of that. And that's interesting. It's a detail I hadn't really thought about. And, on the topic of noise, though, is like, it's like canon that these animatronics have pre-recorded voice lines, but I think it was very wise in the first game to basically not use those voice lines. Like you'll occasionally hear like Bonnie go bum ba dum ba dum, like off in the distance, or you'll hear Freddy's laugh, but that's about it in terms of voice.
I feel like if they gave these characters voices, it would have ruined them.
Yes, agreed. I think it would have detracted from the horror because it would have made them feel more like people, and you don't want them to feel like people. You want them to feel like monsters, and they definitely feel more monstrous by having them make it feel like those voice boxes, those voice lines. They're not even something they're using intentionally. Like they're just sort of this disgusting like audio box that they occasionally use to make screeching sounds. Like they don't even try to use them for communication. And I think that helps with the horror. So that's Chica. She's interesting.